Hey everybody, this is Dream, and we have a 5-game college basketball slate. There is no NBA today. Uh, Make sure to get out and vote. Yeah, so let's get in the slate. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Really does help the channel out a bunch. Thank you guys. With that said, let's get into the teams that are playing today. So we have 5 games. Um, Really, only one of them really expects to be close, and that's Mercer and ECU. All the other 4 games are at least 10 points or more difference, and then there's a couple with blowout potential, like Purdue against uh, UW Milwaukee and Georgetown against Coppin. But otherwise, and South Carolina versus South Carolina State too. Yeah, that game's almost 20 something points. Overall, it's an interesting slate. We got some good players to choose from today. Really, not a whole lot of forwards. So how DraftKings works with college basketball is you can put 3 guards, 3 forwards, and then 2 utility players, so they can be either guards or forwards. And today I've got quite a few good options at guard, but we really only have 5 guys at forward. So I definitely recommend your utility spots be guards today. That will definitely be advantageous on the slate. With that said, the top scoring teams today are Georgetown, Purdue, South Carolina, and Providence in that order. So obviously we're going to try to find players on those teams. But as for the other teams, there's still a couple teams and a couple players on those teams that have some good options on them, especially value plays. So with that said, let's get into it here. I'm actually going to start with forwards first because it's kind of the more simple aspect here. Um, so we're going to start by looking at James Gleason III from Mercer. Now, Mercer is expected to score about 70 points today, and they're expected to beat ECU, so they're an interesting play. He played 27 minutes per game last year and averaged about 10 points and 5 rebounds. He should get a little bit more this season. He should have his role increased. But as you can see, he was pretty good last year. I mean, he was kind of up and down, but he had some good games. And this is a good matchup for him where he should be able to do pretty well in this matchup. I think it's a good spot for him overall, and he should be a good player for their team. Then we're going to look at Eddy for Purdue. Now, Purdue is expected to play pretty well today, and he is going to be the new top tier center. He was the backup last year, and he should be he in line to be the starter now. And as you can see, even though last year he did really well, even though he didn't play full complement of minutes, he still had a lot of good games, had double doubles quite a bit, and I expect him to get up and running in this season with a pretty easy matchup here where he should be able to dominate and do very well. And so I really like him on this particular slate. He should be the starting center. And then Jerry Ogimuno Johnson, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, for Ryder. He's a decent value play that should play around 25 or so minutes. Just a cheap option, a guy that should be the starter. And as you can see, last year he did really well. Now this is a tough matchup against Providence, but somebody on Riders got to do good, and might as well be him. Then we're going to look at GG Jackson here for South Carolina. Now he is a little bit risky because he's a 5-star freshman, but he is also a 5-star freshman, so he's probably going to start, and he's likely going to have a good opportunity here. Obviously, he's pretty expensive, so it's going to be a little bit harder to roster as a result of that. But still, I think he's going to have a high floor, and he should come out running pretty hard. And then finally, Jalen Johnson from Milwaukee, UW Milwaukee. Now he's facing Purdue, which is a little bit of a tough matchup. But he has upside. He's been really good here last season. Now he didn't play as many minutes early in the year last year, but he really did get together late in the season, and so I suspect that he's going to be a top tier option for them despite the cheap price. Now the catch here is that it's not going to be a super, he's playing for a really bad team, and they're actually slated as the second lowest scoring team on the slate. So he's got some risk involved, but we'll see. I think he could play pretty well in this particular game. Then we're going to look at our guards. So I'm going to start with Nande Turkey for Coppin. Now Coppin State is interesting. This guy played 34 minutes per game last season for Coppin, and he has averaged 13 points and 6 rebounds last year. Hopefully he can improve on that and become even better this year. And as you can see, he's pretty good at rebounding for a guard, so I do like that aspect. And he does get some peripheral points like steals and stuff like that. So I think he's in a good spot here. Even though it's a tough matchup for Coppin, they're one of the better weak teams, or teams expected to lose, I should say, on this particular slate. So I look for him to have a good game regardless. Then we're going to look at Sam Sessions for Coppin. Now he transferred in from Penn State, so he's played at a pretty high level before, and he should be able to play a big complement of minutes. Now, he was a little inconsistent at Penn State, but again, that's a better place to play than here at Coppin, so I expect him to have some upside, playing at an easier school kind of, competition-wise. Now, this is a tough matchup to start the season, but he's played some good teams in the past, so I expect him to come out and play pretty well for them. Primo Spears for Georgetown. He's probably one of my favorite options for Georgetown. Now he is competing with Dante Harris to be the starting point guard, but it looks like Harris is going to be out to start the season, so he should be the starter. And his price is too cheap. As you can see, he did transfer in from DeQuinton, and he played quite a few minutes there, or at least up and down a little bit, but he should play a full complement of minutes here as a starter tomorrow, and so I expect him to be a great play. Then we're going to look at Brandon Murray for Georgetown as well. He is a little bit expensive, but he transferred in from LSU where he played 30 minutes a game. Played a lot of good teams last year. The only team he didn't do great against was Kentucky, really, ironically. But he is a good player. And he played in a pretty tough conference last season, so it's going to get easier for him. And this is a great spot for him to start off, and I expect him to play well in this game. His price point's pretty fair for what he's capable of as well. Then we're going to look at Kamar Robertson for Mercer. Now, Mercer is favored to win this game, so that's one of the reasons I like some of their players. And he was a really solid player for them last year, averaging about 30 minutes a game and averaging 10 and 4. And he actually gets some assists and stuff too, and some steals, pretty decent from that perspective as well. So I think he's got a pretty good ceiling here for Mercer as one of the better players on his team, and he should play a full complement of minutes. And so I do like him on this particular matchup. Then we're going to look at Devin Carter for Providence. Now, he's pretty expensive, but he's a transfer from South Carolina who averaged about 9 points per game last season, but he's going to have a bigger role here at Providence, and I expect him to step in and be a starter and get right at it. Then we're going to look at Dwight Murray for Ryder. Now, Ryder is one of the slightly better teams on the slate for the teams that are not really expected to be great. And he was a really good player last season, averaging 37 minutes per game. And as you can see, he averaged about 13, 6, and 4. So he's a really good play for his price point. It's a tough matchup against Providence, but I still think he's in play simply because of how good of a player he actually is. And then Alan Powell for a Ryder, another guy for Ryder that I like okay. Now, he played about 30 minutes a game last season, and I expect him to do similar to that. He wasn't quite as good as Carter before him, but he is a pretty decent, as Murray before him, but he's still a decent price here for what he can do, and I think he has some upside as a starter now. And then Michi Johnson, finally, last guy here for South Carolina. He transferred from Ohio State, where he was pretty solid. Even though he didn't play very many minutes, he would occasionally have a couple good games. He played more early in the season than late, and he should be a starter for South Carolina. And so it makes him a pretty interesting play here in this particular matchup, where he should be able to dominate. And as you can see, like early in the season last year, he had some good games where he did pretty good against weak opponents. And he's going to get more minutes, obviously, so he's going to have some upside here. So with that said, guys, thank you guys for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions about Slate, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.